Hey, what's up, everybody? You're listening to The Fringe live on 103.7 WPWL Polling Public Radio. I'm Mike Bergquist, the host of this here show, which is broadcast live from the Rush Studios in downtown Pauling, New York. Well, I'm full of sun chips, and I've had a little bit of energy drink, so I'm ready to go. I hope everybody out there is ready for the show. I'm going to start it off the way I usually do. I feel like I left out a key piece of information at the beginning of the show. I don't know what it could be, but you know what? This is a good sort of little window into how this is going to go for the next 2 hours. But anyways, I want to start the show with a happy birthday, rest in peace from this day in history. This day, as of this recording, it's August 5th when I'm recording this. So first of all, I want to say birthday, a ton of athletes. If you go to August 5th on Wikipedia and you look at the birthdays, it is packed with athletes. Also, William Wallace, leading Scottish resistance against England. Oh, no, it's his execution. But he's not our death day, by the way. But if you go back 9 months, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, November. Oh, that's what it must be. Daylight savings time. November 5th. Daylight savings time. That's when you conceive your child if you want them to be a incredibly successful athlete. This is the Fringe, where you're going to learn a lot of things like that. So, where is it? Where's my notes? Oh, here we go. Okay, so besides the athletes, the birthday I went with today, and I don't even remember why I picked him, and apparently it didn't. Let's see if that works. There we go. I don't remember why I picked this guy, but it's I believe his name is pronounced Guy de Maupassant, who is a French writer, remembered as a master of the short story form and as a representative of the naturalist school of writers who depicted human lives and destinies and social forces in disillusioned and often pessimistic terms. Protégé of Flaubert. Ball, his first published story, Ball of Fat, from 1880 is often considered his masterpiece. You know, that's rough. You hear that sometimes. Harper Lee is a good example of that. Writers who kind of, they really hit the mark dead on with their first thing. And what you don't necessarily hear about is how, like, debilitating that can be for a writer if their massive success is their first piece of published work. Because then you have to top that as you go along, and you're going to doubt yourself, and people are going to doubt you, and it's weird. You never want the first thing you do to be the hit, is what I'm trying to say. So, poor Guy de Maupassant, his was the hit, but he's famous, so good for you, sir. Happy birthday. And rest in peace today is to Bud Schulberg. Bud Schulberg was a screenwriter, TV producer, novelist, sports writer. He wrote the Academy Award-winning screenplay On the Waterfront, and it looks like he got an Academy Award for his 1957 screenplay, A Face in the Crowd. I know him from just being kind of a nerd when it comes to literary figures. I'm a very, very big F. Scott Fitzgerald fan, the whole Lost Generation. And Bud Schulberg, if you ever watch any documentaries about F. Scott Fitzgerald, Bud Schulberg typically pops up towards the end of it because he collaborated with F. Scott Fitzgerald quite a bit in Hollywood after F. Scott Fitzgerald began working in Hollywood to do screenplays towards the end of his life and when his alcoholism was at its, I would say, peak because he died shortly thereafter from it. But it's not about F. Scott Fitzgerald right now. It's Bud Schulberg. And apparently he also wrote a 1941 novel, What Makes Sammy Run, and a 1947 novel, The Harder They Fall. So he always seemed like a very nice person in the documentaries. And he was married 4 times, which makes him a fringe personality. And, all right, they got a picture on Wikipedia of him from 1954, and he just looks like Andrew Dice Clay. So I'm going to take a picture of that and maybe post it later so everyone can see. And that's Instagram. I don't know what my name is on Instagram. It's The Fringe Radio or The Fringe Show. Most of the things I post have my face on it, so if you know what I look like, just follow that page. And you see all the fun stuff I do. But I digress. Let's play a song now so I can settle in here, and then we'll look at the news. The news is horrific today. Just a heads up. There's some real weird stuff, and then anything that seems like it might be good is also very odd, so we'll get into all of that in a moment. But I'm going to play The Wayward Wind by... I know I've played this before on the show, and I know I didn't know how to say her name then, and I still don't know how to say it now. It's either Gogi Grant or Gogi Grant. Gogi Grant. So, however you want to pronounce her name, go for it. But this is The Wayward Wind. The Wayward Wind. Gogi Grant, you decide, America. That's a great song. That's another one that I know from writer-related documentaries. There's this fantastic Beat Generation documentary on YouTube. I think it's in like 8 or 9 parts. Each one's like 10 minutes. Called The Source, which explores the Beat Generation from its beginnings all the way into its transition into the hippie movement, which is more or less a bastardization of the Beat Generation and that whole movement. There's always a group of hipsters at any point in history. If there's a cool movement happening, hipsters come in, try to make it their own, and it becomes this disastrous embarrassment. And that's what I think the hippies are related to the Beat Generation. Just like a lot of... it happens now. Any group of people, there's always a little offshoot that gets way too big and doesn't fully understand the movement, just wants attention or wants to get away with doing anything they want with no consequence, and that's, So, as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of the hippie movement. I think it's... I feel the same way about the hippie movement as I feel about hipsters, basically, in this day and age, and sort of like the protest culture. At least the hippies were protesting something that made sense to protest. Protesting a war, I think, is always like a protest that makes sense, I guess. But hipsters nowadays will protest anything and everything, and a lot of the time it's just like, I don't know. I won't get into all that. I've talked ad nauseum in the past about it, so yeah. Let's look at the news today. We'll go Google News, which is, dumb. I don't know how else to say it. Theirs is not great, typically, because they try to be fun and have, like, pop news headlines. If you want the hard-hitting stuff, the real ugly look at the world around you, that's Reddit news. So I like to read both some headlines for everybody, let everybody know what's going on out there, and why you should just stay inside and lock the doors always, because it's just not worth it going out there into this world. Let's look at some headlines here from Google first. FBI speaks to pig farmer for second time about missing Molly Tibbetts. So there's this student from the University of Iowa named Molly Tibbetts who, let's just jump into this. Okay, I guess this is Fox News giving this story. So it's the FBI returning to a pig farm to again question the owner of the pig farm in connection with the mysterious disappearance of 20-year-old Molly Tibbetts. Let's see. The agent was seen by Fox News arriving and speaking to Wayne Chaney for about 5 to 10 minutes Friday afternoon. Now, whether or not Wayne Chaney did this, he has a guilty name. I don't know of any story set in the Midwest where somebody disappears. The person who did it always has a name similar to Wayne Chaney, I feel like. It's just that kind of, a little bit of folksy redneck kind of a name, I don't know. So I think that's pretty perfect of, life imitating art, though this is a very, very tragic, unfortunate way that that's happening. Chaney said he would allow the FBI to search his entire property. He expressed confidence that the Bureau wouldn't find anything. And so far, he said the FBI has searched his home, some of his property, and his cell phone. He told Fox News he has never seen Tibbetts before because he doesn't venture into Brooklyn, Iowa, where she lives, several miles from his home. But let's see. With the FBI poised to return to his home Sunday, I guess that's now, he said he doesn't know what to expect. So as for what the FBI has asked him about, his response was, "I don't know." But he said he didn't think the FBI believes he's related to the woman's disappearance. So news of the FBI visit came as the reward for information leading to the missing woman's whereabouts climbed to $260,000. That's kind of disturbing. in a sense that, is that what it is? This is confusingly written. Are they saying that it just happens that the FBI came to visit him when the reward amount climbed? Or when the reward amount climbed, somebody decided, that girl's life is worth that much money, I'll phone a tip in and cash out. So I don't know which one it is. I'm really hoping it was just a coincidence that those things happened, and not that a fellow human being said, you know what, 250,000, not enough for me to speak up. 260 though? Yeah, I can make that work. If that's how that happened, that's disgusting. But why get riled up over imaginary crimes here? So let's continue. Wayne Chaney said of Molly Tibbetts he had no idea who she was and suspects some guy has her. So helpful. Law enforcement asked him Thursday to take a polygraph test and he refused. Now, I know from watching cop shows that is not an immediate admission of guilt, but it never looks good. Because if you have nothing to hide, then why are you hiding? It's just that basic idea, right? So, yeah. So Cheney's the pig farmer who told Fox News earlier that FBI investigators arrived at his home July 26th and asked to search his property without a warrant. They were there for 2 hours taking photos of the interior of the home and also searching his garage. Okay, so this is a weirdly written article where it almost makes him seem like he's a victim here. And he might be the victim of slander. If he didn't actually have anything to do with this. But pig farmer is, pigs are infamous for eating bones. So, there's a pretty gruesome outlook there if you believe this guy did it. So, we'll see. Hopefully they find Molly Tibbetts. Hopefully she's alive and everything's great. But let's continue on with the headlines. We've got Mendocino Complex fires, now 6th largest by acreage on record, reaching nearly 360 square miles. So that was written in a kind of congratulatory, like, look at this record-breaking thing, which is weird. The NRA are in the news today. We're going to talk about them later. I have them under nice news. You'll see why. If you stay tuned, that is. In the biz, we call that a tease. Enjoy. Now, I like to look at this every week also, what Google is personally recommending to me. And if you don't know what to expect, really, you can listen to all my old shows on Mixcloud.com. If you can figure out how to navigate that mess of a website. And it's not the radio station's fault either. I'm not blaming the station. That's just a website that could use some more features that would make it easier to navigate. It's not a well-designed website, Mixcloud.com, but it's there, and that's the archive where all my shows are. So you can find all those there, kind of get more of a picture of who I am. Of course, some of this radio stuff is not, it's I'm performing, so take it all with a grain of salt. But anyways, I got really off topic there. Google gives things now where they recommend articles to you based on your interest. I assume all of the data that they take from you before selling it to third parties, they use it in their algorithms. So this is what they have for me this week. 4 articles, and looking at it right now, it's decent. They're getting better each week. First up, we got The Power of Neil Young's Ohio in 2018, Why the Kent State Protest Anthem Remains So Relevant. I'm going to immediately disagree with that from Salon.com. The Ohio thing, I know it's very easy to draw a false equivalency between those protests and the protests that are happening nowadays. But that's exactly what it is, a false equivalency. So, Ohio, not really relevant. The National Guard isn't killing student protesters. So, and that's not a thing that's, at risk of happening anytime soon. So, just a bad headline. Let's see what else they got. Also, I don't care about Neil Young or Kent State particularly. The Kent State history I care about, but Kent State as, the way it exists in the present day, I don't care about that at all. And the song Ohio is just a bit overplayed. So, sorry, Google. You are so far 0 for 1. Let's see. Joe Rogan talks Dead and Company on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. I like the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Congratulations, Google. 1 for 1. Let's see. 1978, Gilchrist F2 mandolin made for Ry Cooder on Mandolin Cafe. I like the music of Ry Cooder. I don't play instruments, but that is a fancy-looking mandolin for $14,500. So there you go. Now, is that an investment that pays for itself? Like, if you were to spend $14,500 on a mandolin, would you be able to play that mandolin so well and for so long that you would eventually make $14,500 off of it? Unless you, like, hooked up with, like, an established group, I don't think you'd be seeing anywhere near that money. And, you know, I mean, eventually you would if you started at a young enough age with it. But let's just say you're in your 50s or 60s. Would you make that investment back using the mandolin? You can't make it back using other instruments. Just food for thought. So, moving on. So that's that's good enough. It gave me a little fun question for the audience there. Also, paulingpublicradio.org. If I didn't mention that, you can go on there. Be anonymous, but you can contribute to the show. Yeah. And then the last recommended article for me is Patti Smith and Joan Baez cover Bob Dylan in Germany. And that couldn't be more for me. So I might try to find audio of that in a little while and play some of it on the air. Much to probably everyone's chagrin. Those three people, their singing styles are, I've heard all of them criticized before, but I love all of them. So I'll try to find something. Moving on to U.S. news, we've got some judge telling the Trump administration to clean up the immigration mess it made. I really am kind of, that might be a group of people that are dangerously not self-aware in this country, or anybody who is a judge in a court. These people, I think long enough being able to just pass judgment like every day on things, they start to think of themselves as above humanity. And then they just make sweeping statements like that, like ordering the president's administration to clean up the immigration mess. Yeah, I don't know. Judges are weird. That whole system is screwed up, and I don't know. Let's not get into all that right now. And then, we're going to talk about Venezuela later. There was an assassination attempt on their president, and they're blaming America. And there is some circumstantial evidence that we may have had something to do with it. But we'll talk about that later on. There's another tsunami warning issued after another earthquake rocks Indonesia. God, what a rough place that has to be to live. Let's see. Then local news. Again, who could possibly be interested in the Danbury Country Music and Food Truck Rally 2018? Why would that would not be an article to bring up on the air, something I just did. So, let's see. We got updates on Papa John's coming up a little later. I'm seeing that here in the news. Let's see. Some guy got married, and all the royals are talking about it, so who cares? We've got excellent Star Trek news, everyone, and we have some ridiculously odd Russian news that I'm really going to dive headfirst into in a little while. That's one you're going to want to tune in for when we discuss what's happening with Russia, because it's bizarre, and we're really going to dive into it. We have another athlete trying to make political statements on a sports stage. Again, I don't like taking political or socioeconomic advice from people who knowingly went into a career where they would get hit in the head very hard for several years in a row. Anybody at risk of CTE because of a career they willingly went into, I don't want advice from on most things. So Randy Moss made a statement with he wore a tie at the Hall of Fame, and I guess the tie had the names of every police shooting victim from either some area or some time period written out on the tie. And then the dummy has a suit jacket buttoned in the picture, so good job. You went there to make a statement, you covered it with a beige suit from the Steve Harvey collection, I'm going to assume. Steve Harvey has the best suits, man. I can't even criticize Steve Harvey's suits. They're just they're big, they're bright, they're ridiculous. It's half a zoot suit every time. It's great. I love it. I want those to become something that is a societal norm. But it would be odd, I guess, if zoot suits came back. I'm going to make a push for it. I think that's going to be our Fringe 2019 goal. Is I'm going to try to... First, I got to get an audience. You guys are great so far. But we're going to build the audience, and then we're going to try to... I think that our uniform is going to be zoot suits for the Fringe. And that's going to be my new campaign. Travel around the world in a zoot suit. Take pictures at landmarks in your zoot suit. What a great phrase, too. But I'm going to stop saying it now. Looks like Ebola is back in the Congo. 33 reported dead. Rest in peace to all 33 of them. It is, I fall prey to this too, just as much as anybody else, and it is kind of disturbing. And I'm disturbed with myself over it too. That there is this weird, that disconnect of things happening on the African continent, and even the Asian continent, and even Australia. I mean, North America and Europe, we kind of share each other's news, and we kind of identify with each other a lot more, as opposed to other regions of the world, which is why when you see things like these Ebola outbreaks in Africa, it's like, it's horrifically tragic, but there's that disconnect there because nobody ever talks about it here because it's not happening here. And I fall into that too. Sometimes I have to take a step back and go, that's 33 human beings dead because of a fairly curable illness. So, yeah. Well, it says here from The Hill, health authorities face fight against Ebola, quote, in a war zone, end quote. So, they need a break over there. That's my harsh stance on Africa. I think they need a break from disaster. I know I might ruffle some feathers saying something so controversial, but that's what I think. So, yeah. Should we look at Reddit news? I mean, they got stuff like California fire tornado had 143 mile per hour winds, possibly the state's strongest twister ever. 99 coal miners were just laid off in Wyoming, which, I mean, how much coal could there even be left? That's a very ignorant statement from a pretty self-admittedly ignorant person. But, I mean, like, they've been mining coal for, like, hundreds of years now. Maybe 200. I don't know. But, like, I don't know. Coal mining, there is no way that was going to be a sustainable career forever. It's just not a possible thing that could happen. So, it is, it's unfortunate that these 99 coal miners got laid off from the Wyoming County mine. Wyoming County. Maybe this is West Virginia. And let's see. Yep, it's Charleston Gazette Mail, wvgazettemail.com. Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. Again, I mean, just to reiterate what I said, it's like, eventually that was going to be the end result, is that we don't need this job anymore, so we don't need the workers anymore. Yeah, that's just the way it is. And that's one of the things where I kind of... that's one of the things I disagree with Donald Trump on pretty staunchly, is the idea of bringing coal jobs back. It's like not a thing that we need anymore, but whatever. So, we're going to talk about Xi Jinping's stuff going on in China. He might be our dunce of the week. I'm not sure. And then there's like other stuff about like a cellist was booted from an American Airlines flight after buying a ticket for their cello. Good, I say. I say good. Let's see. Let's take a quick break, because it's just headlines, and I would like to get into some more specific stuff. We're already a half an hour through the show. Isn't that something? We're going to play a David Bowie song. It's pretty new. I mean, it's not a new song, I believe, but it's they just... A week ago, the David Bowie YouTube account released this official 2018 audio. It's a remaster of David Bowie song Zeros for a forthcoming, like, I don't know if it's like a compilation album or what it is, but it's called Loving the Alien, and it's going to collect 1983 through 1988. So we're going to hear Zeros from this remaster, which, according to the YouTube comments anyways, appears to be more in line with what David Bowie wanted the song to be, instead of what it was back when it first came out, where, other production people had their hands all over it, and it was a whole thing. And when managerial positions start to put their hands into the creative pot, it tends to create issues with what the artist was intending to do. It's, I won't go into everything with that. But without further ado, here's David Bowie, Zeros. This is the 2018 version that just pretty much came out. The official audio, David Bowie, Zeros. David Bowie, Zeros. That's 2018. Remaster by Mario McNulty for the forthcoming Loving the Alien box set, which can be pre-ordered now, apparently. So that's a great, great, great song. And I was thinking during that, is David Bowie, trying to be as objective as possible here, which is not a possible thing for a human, as far as I know and as far as I'm concerned. Is David Bowie the greatest of all time in terms of musicians? If you look at the lyrics, dynamite. The music, always catchy, always fantastic. The skill, incredible, right? And then the showmanship. The showmanship is second to none, I would say. Bowie, I don't even know how many phases he went through. Let me see. David Bowie phases. But, okay, let's see. This is from independent.co.uk. The iconic singer's ever-changing personas. Let's see here. Davy Jones, which is just his actual name. It's a fun fact. David Bowie's real name is Davy Jones. He changed that, obviously, because, there already was one. So, then he did Ziggy Stardust, right? Which everybody knows, of course. Aladdin Sane, which was basically Ziggy Stardust. Then we have the Thin White Duke. Halloween Jack. I'm not familiar with this. Oh, it's the lead character from Diamond Dogs, apparently. And then Elephant Man. But I believe there were several more in there. But anyways, each one, everybody, there were no duds there. And David Bowie, as commercial as he was, because he was a household name, and rightly so, as commercial as he was, he never seemed to be. You know what I mean? Like, he got all the money from the commercial stuff, but it never impacted his creativity or his persona. He always put the sort of the art stuff ahead of commercial interest, which, that's admirable. That's admirable. And to get that done correctly, to be able to walk that line is, there's not many that can do that. It's certainly not to the level of a David Bowie. So, is he the greatest musician of all time? Objectively speaking, looking at him as the sum of the parts, he could be. Now, this is one of the reasons why I would love to have somebody in the chat room or here, so that I could, somebody could bring up another name, because there's got to be others. But David Bowie's there. Yeah, I don't know. So I guess if you can think of one and you're hearing this on a replay or something like that, leave a comment wherever you're hearing it, or on the Facebook page, which I guess it's facebook.com/The Fringe Radio, maybe? I don't know. But I should know, though, because I'm my social media guy. So the fact that I don't know any of the social media URLs is, well, it's not good. It's not good at all. But that's neither here nor there. Another tangent, which is weird because I got an adequate amount of sleep last night. There's no excuse for this. Let's go with nice news. It's about the NRA. What? How could that be? Said everyone in the audience. Well, this is from Slate.com. And you know what? I can't even get mad at this pun because it's not egregious. On Slate, I guess when they have their new news stuff, they put it under the slatest. This is the slatest news. Get it? So anyways, the NRA says it is facing a financial crisis. That's right, the NRA is close to going bankrupt. Why is this nice news? Because Twitter users are sending their thoughts and prayers to the NRA. Now, that is hilarious because every time there's a school shooting or a mass shooting, the NRA and all the politicians who take the NRA's money and push their agenda through in legislative sort of ways, which should be illegal. Everything about that sounds like it's illegal. Nope, it's not. It's the way that politics works in our country. And we wonder why our democracy's failing. But anyways, before I run down that crazy road, let me turn back around and get back on the main road here, which is anytime those mass shootings happen and the politicians in the NRA, they tweet out that they're holding the victims in their thoughts and prayers. So now anybody who's critical of the NRA on Twitter is tweeting thoughts and prayers to the NRA because the NRA is about to die. So that's I love that. That's such a... It's petty. It's petty and spiteful, but it's in such a satisfying way. And I mean, I'm not a part of the gun debate necessarily, and I know that's not a. I know everybody is part of the gun debate. It's not one of those things where you can choose to be a part of it or not. It impacts everyone. It doesn't. Thankfully, I'm very grateful that this debate has not taken a sort of prime part of my life. Like, no, I don't. As far as I know, I don't have any relatives who have been killed in a mass shooting or something like this, or who have gone out and done something like that. Like, I'm pretty insulated from that world, and I'm lucky that that's the case. But I guess that doesn't mean that I get to say, well, that's everyone else's problem. I don't have to worry about it. So where I fall on the issue is as time goes on, I become a little more anti-gun. Now, I lean libertarian, so that part of me is like everybody should be able to have whatever they want. But I don't know. The gun debate is weird. Again, I say it every time. I'm not going to solve it here. I am not the person to answer your questions about this, to provide a really well-researched and thought-out argument for one side or the other. I'm just not able to do that, and I don't have an interest in siding strongly with one side or the other. But I was thinking about it yesterday, that whole thing, and it's a weird thing where, like, this has been going on since at least 1990. I mean, long before that, but like 1999 with Columbine was like the first one that put this whole thing kind of on the map, the gun debate. And since 1999, has anything really changed policy-wise? And if it has, those policy changes clearly aren't working. They're not preventing things from happening. So you start to look at what options are left. Now, I'm not saying take all the guns away is the answer. In a perfect world, yes, not a single human would have guns. We would forget how to make them. We would forget the science behind how they work. That would be ideal, but that's not going to happen. I don't know. I'm just rambling now about the NRA. All I wanted to say was that, here we go. Steve Kerr says on Twitter, don't send money. Thoughts and prayers should suffice for the NRA. And then Chelsea, I'm not going to read Chelsea Handlers. She's pretty despicable. So, So the NRA might be closing down, which I think is a good thing. I think any major lobbyist or any group that does a lot of lobbying, that basically buys political influence, which we frown upon when it happens in third world countries and other countries moving into first world sort of status. We're not okay with private institutions influencing things there. But we're okay with it here. Actually, we influence everybody else's stuff with our own private stuff. I'm all over the place. But if you're on Twitter, make sure that you send the NRA your thoughts and prayers. That should help them. I mean, that's what they think, right? That's the cure-all for tragedy. So, a little bit of their own medicine. I love it. I think that's fantastic. Now, here's a new bit I'm going to do on the air. And, I I don't have a music bed for it or anything. If anybody didn't hear last week's show, I'm not doing music beds for my bits anymore because I am now podcasting this show. So, so far just on YouTube, which doesn't really count, but I'm going to get it on iTunes at some point when I buckle down and really do that part of work. But so because of that, I don't want to get any kind of copyright infringement stuff. I've already had one of my videos flagged on YouTube. Can't be monetized now because it contains 30-second clip of Adventure Time that friend of the show and frequent guest Ed Doherty asked me to play. So, does that mean Ed Doherty owes me money? I'd like to think the answer is yes. I might text him that later out of the blue with no explanation that he owes me cash. But anyway, I'm not doing the music anymore behind the bits. The bits will still be there. You still get your dunce of the week, your science, good, bad, ugly science. The good, bad, ugly part of it doesn't really make too much sense anymore because the music's gone. But until I get somebody to make me some music, it's just going to be none. So this is a new bit that also doesn't have music. It's called Nerd Alert. And basically I find somebody in the news going out of their way to just be a nerd or a narc or just taking away something nice. So our nerd alert of the week is for a California company that's created an instant marijuana breath test device. So they created a breathalyzer for weed. Nerd alert. See, that's where that comes in. This is from NPR, like M as in monkey, mprnews.com, not NPR News. So, as legalization of recreational and medical marijuana continues to expand, police across the country are more concerned than ever about stoned drivers taking to the nation's roads and freeways, endangering lives. If you ever talk to anybody who smokes weed habitually, 99% of them say that they drive perfectly fine. This is not a thing to be compared to alcohol, because it's different. It's just a different drug. So, let's see. With few accurate roadside tools to detect pot impairment, police today have to rely largely on field sobriety tests developed to fight drunk driving, or old-fashioned observation, which can be foiled with Visine or breath mints. That has left police, courts, public health advocates, and recreational marijuana users themselves frustrated. 9 states and the District of Columbia have legalized recreational marijuana, and 30 states and D.C. have legalized medical pot. Now, one California company claims it has made a major breakthrough in creating what some thought of as a unicorn, a marijuana breathalyzer. We are trying to make the establishment of impairment around marijuana rational and to balance fairness and safety, says Hound Lab CEO Mike Lynn and chief nerd/narc of the company. In a freshly pressed dress shirt and short hair, it's clear Lynn is no stoner inventor with a pipe dream. Too many puns for me. We're done with this. So basically, a California company says it's created an instant marijuana breath test device, effectively making them the nerd alert of the week. Because why? What are you doing, man? I understand you're trying to make things safer, but you're just trying to tell on people at the end of the day. Anybody who likes to just tell on people is kind of just, I would use the word a loser. If your whole thing is just snitching on other people, and I'm, you know what, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut because there's a little snitching. I think there are some people I know, and yeah, let's not go there. But what else do we got here? What else? It's hard to go from there. Oh, you're perfect. Here we go. 80-year-old, keeping with the marijuana talk here, 80-year-old medical marijuana patient with an expired card is jailed for less than an eighth of cannabis. Now, this is coming from Fox 17 online. Wait, was it? Yeah, Fox17online.com. 80-year-old medical marijuana patient with expired card jailed for less than an eighth of cannabis. Michigan, 80-year-old grandmother in Clare County, jailed for the first time in her life because she had a small amount of cannabis at home. But her Michigan medical marijuana card expired. Dolores Saltzman and her son Mark tell Fox 17 cannabis saved her life. It worked up her appetite when she was sick. It helped her heal after surgeries. It eases her pain from ongoing health conditions. They are disturbed. A deputy jailed her overnight for using her medicine. After I smoke, I go down to a 1, pain-wise, said Dolores Saltzman, 80. Before I smoke, I would say I'm an 8 right now. This November, she turns 81. She's living with arthritis, diverticulitis, muscle, and bone aches, but says that cannabis keeps her moving and making art. By the way, this is all scientifically proven that that's how that works. So there's not even a question as to whether or not this has that kind of effect, or if it's placebo, or if she's lying. No, that's not the case. There is an enormous amount of medical documentation that this stuff works. So, let's see. Cannabis saved my life because I had a bad bleed about 4 years ago, and Mark took care of me. Adding, when doctors prescribed her opioids, it caused stomach pains and vomiting. Isn't that something? Jailed overnight for less than an eighth of marijuana, which she was using medicinally. And yet a doctor wanted her to take opioids, which are highly addictive and are pretty much the source of a nationwide epidemic going on right now. The inconsistency in logic is alarming. And it seems like just a person looking at that should go, well, this is obviously nonsense. This doesn't make any sense at all, that this would be the way it works. But here we are. Here we are in reality. And that's how it works. So let's see. June 13th at around 9 p.m., Deputy Ashley Grunow, let's say their names on the air. People should know. Knocked on Dolores' door. Okay, so according to court records, Grunow, who was trying to locate Saltzman's great-granddaughter and return her lost phone and ID, the deputy smelled marijuana from the porch. The deputy asked whose it was. The old woman, Dolores Saltzman, said it was hers, explaining she was honest with the deputy. And so this article is written weird because it's just written as like the son asking the mom if things are correct and her confirming them. So it says, the deputy came in and kind of frustrated you. Remember how you were telling me that your anxiety went up off the roof? Mark asked his mother, to which she said, way up. Court records show the deputy sees several pipes, 4 joints, and 1 purple jar with an undisclosed amount of cannabis. When Fox 17 asked Saltzman how much marijuana she had, she explained it was less than an eighth of an ounce. The deputy searched her bedroom, took pictures, helped her clean up the kitchen. That's a weird third one on that list. I got everything done but the one pan. And I says, are you ready, hun? Because she's just standing there leaning after she put the bread and ketchup away. Just leaning there, said Saltzman. I said, are you ready, hun? Let's go. What a bizarre article this is. Then court records show Saltzman was handcuffed in the patrol car. That's egregious. She says the deputy did not read her rights to her, and she was escorted to jail for the night. Then it says, that's ridiculous what they do to people. They don't need to make you that cold, said Saltzman. Old Arthur was screaming at me. She won't know who Arthur is, Mark said to his mother. Arthritis, she clarified. Do you see how this is written bizarrely? Like, this could be trimmed down to just the facts and not this weird sort of like squabbling between a Midwestern mother and her son. So I guess that's the gist of it. Is again, it's a medicine. Marijuana is a medicine, and it's still treated as a criminal drug. And personally, I don't think it's the scientific community that has the issue. I think it's the conservative religious group. And it has nothing to do with health effects. It has to do with some kind of strange moral judgment. It always does when it comes to these things. When it comes to somebody doing something to themselves and somebody else not liking it, it's because they are saying, that person's not living the way I want them to. It should be illegal. And it often happens that way because the person yelling that is often the Christian church. Now, I'm not here to rile up Christians. I myself am technically Christian. I was raised Catholic. I had communion, confirmation, the whole deal. But there's... Hold on, I'm trying to find my political disclaimer. Here we go. The views and opinions expressed on this program, The Fringe, or by its host, me, Mike Berquist, do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of Public Radio. I'd like to make that very clear. So, yeah, it's just odd. It's really odd. And considering this is a nation where cocaine was a medicine until about 1930, there's zero... It doesn't make any sense at all. which means it has to be some kind of like, I don't know. I'm going to fall into conspiracy theories and someone's going to come in here and like take me away in a straitjacket. So let's just avoid all those conspiracies about the government and the church working together to make money off of people. Forget all that. That's neither here nor there. You know what? Let's do another song and then we'll talk about, just other stuff. I want to talk a little bit about Osama bin Laden maybe when we come back. There was a very interesting thing that came out about him. So we'll get into some more worldly news when we come back. First, we're going to play a song. What's the song going to be? Excellent question. I prepared 2 songs today, and not sure why I thought that would be enough. I do a 2-hour show, and I often play more than 2 songs. How about Blowing in the Wind? Because the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. And that's the way I should end any time I start talking about things, when I'm just by myself anyways. There's nobody to kind of ask me a question or slow me down, and I'm just rambling and I go off on these crazy tangents like this one. Let's just stop and go, you know what? The answer is blowing in the wind. I'm not going to be able to answer this question. Yeah, so that's my point, I guess. I don't really know what I'm talking about anymore. So here's Bob Dylan. He'll do the talking for the next 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Then we're going to come back and talk about what's going on in the world. Osama bin Laden? Steven Seagal? Is there a connection? No, there isn't. But wouldn't that be something? Here's Bob Dylan, Blowing in the Wind. Bob Dylan, Blowing in the Wind. Some kind of weird version of that song that YouTube has. I say it every time I play Dylan, I think, but he is a hard one to find on YouTube. His people do a crackerjack job of keeping his music away from people who don't want to pay for it. That's me. I don't want to pay for it. So let me cue up that Joan Baez, Patti Smith thing before I forget again. Oh, yeah. Oh, and are they singing A Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall? Yeah, they are. So we're going to be listening to some of that in a little while. It's also a 7-minute song, so if you're not a Patti Smith fan, feel free to tune out, you communist. So let's continue onward here. We did our nerd alert. We talked about the NRA being trolled. Hilarious. Let's do a little world news now. Let's talk about Osama bin Laden. Now, Osama bin Laden, for anybody who doesn't know, is basically the reason why global terrorism is sort of as prevalent, I guess, as it is. I would blame him quite a bit for it. I mean, it existed before him. It exists after him, but I feel like no one was really talking about... I mean, I was young at the time. When 9/11 happened, I was like 9 years old, so I didn't have exactly a grasp on the world yet. I was too busy trying to rent Grand Theft Auto 3 from Blockbuster and play it with adult supervision because it was not appropriate at the time. But so I'm not familiar too much with terrorism in the 90s and 80s and all those different times. Certainly not the 80s. I was not alive yet. So the Guardian did this article on August 2nd. And it was trending on Twitter and the whole thing, and I sat down and I read it yesterday. And what they did was, and this is from theguardian.com, of course, which I feel like they're a British news organization, but I'm not, don't quote me on that. I might be thinking of something else. But basically, they sat down with Osama bin Laden's mother, where she would speak about him for the first time. And it's 17 years after 9/11, for anybody who didn't want to do the math. So I read the article, and it's a good article. It's interesting. It presents facts, and it raises questions, but it doesn't talk about Trump or Obama or any of that nonsense. It leaves us out of it for the most part. And it's great. It's a great article. I encourage everyone to go read it. The weird part, and I knew that this was going to happen going into it, was maybe not to this extent, that they were going to humanize the family of bin Laden. They do a really good job doing that because, let me preface this with a very obvious statement I feel like doesn't have to be made, but I'll make it anyway. Um, I think Osama bin Laden is one of the worst human beings to ever have been born. I think bin Laden is in his own special little, in a room in hell that's just too small and just too narrow to be comfortable, where he has to stand hunched always because there's not enough room to sit or crouch. He's always stuck in that standing position, and he's always tired, and the floor is very hot. But I hope it's infinitely worse than that for him. So I just wanted to say that, because when I talk about humanizing the bin Laden family, some people might start to think I'm sympathizing with terrorism. Not the case at all. Not the case at all. So just want to state that for the record. Leave that to no interpretation at all. So basically, it's an incredibly interesting article. But if you don't want to sit and read it, I'll just basically summarize it for you. It's bin Laden's mother, who I don't even know how to describe her. She looks like she's dressing up as a gypsy for Halloween. Now, is that offensive? Yeah, probably. But I don't mean to offend anybody by it. She just looks like she's wearing costumes. You know, and there's too much makeup on her face. It's that sort of a thing. So, basically, she sat in the room, and it's a weird article because Aliyah Ghanem, who I guess is his mother, is not a major part of this article, which is supposed to be her speaking out in a family interview. So it's her and two of her surviving sons, Ahmad and Hassan, and her second husband, Muhammad al-Attas, who raised all three of them, Ahmad, Hassan, and Osama. So basically the article says that it's the mother talking about how she loves her son, but he was brainwashed and he lost his way, and this whole thing. And one of the brothers actually says in the article that she's still in denial about Osama bin Laden, that she blames everyone except for him for what happened. She blames everyone around him. She said that he was a good man, or like he was a good person that lost his way, and she said that he was brainwashed by a cult while he was in college where he was radicalized. But so she mentions that very briefly. The brothers say similar things to how, he's a member of their family, so they do love, him because he's a brother, but they hate him, or they're disappointed in him because of who he is as a man. So it humanizes the family in that way. It talks about how the family is, I believe they're not allowed to travel outside of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where they are still an incredibly wealthy, influential family, which I thought was pretty odd. But the main interesting part of this article is not even necessarily the mother talking about bin Laden. It's not even necessarily the bin Laden stuff that's interesting in the article. The guy who wrote this article is Martin Chulov, and he really took the time to sit down and examine Saudi Arabia's history with terrorism and extremism, and sort of how they're connected and not necessarily working in tandem, but there is a connection there. And how Saudi Arabia's crown prince, who's coming in, and let me find his name real quick, so he features prominently in this article, Mohammed bin Salman, who's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. He's the heir to the throne. And it talks a lot about him and how he's the great reformist of Saudi Arabia. He said he wants moderate Islam in there, no more extremism. He's cutting funding to certain mosques that have weird, sort of nebulous, kind of hard to define ties to extremism because they preach a particular sort of doctrine from this influential cleric from 1744. It goes back that long, and because this article explains that the clerics gained way too much power in Saudi Arabia, but the government also got way too much power. And both of these powers couldn't do anything against each other because they were both too powerful. And so what came of that was extreme conservatism in their society, which is why a lot of freedoms are suppressed there. So now the new guy coming in, Mohammed bin Salman, he wants to change all of this. He wants bin Laden to be sort of a cautionary tale, or just sort of look at him as the stain he is on Saudi Arabian history, which is the right way to go about that, in my opinion. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who I mean, in America at least, who thinks that women should not be allowed to drive. Well, I mean, you can throw in a gajillion hack jokes right now about women drivers, but I will not. I will not. The Fringe, ally of women. Congratulations, women. I'm on your side now. Well, I wasn't against you. Whatever. This whole riff is going wrong. So, basically, so they talk about bin Laden's, his history here, and then sort of like how his family was disturbed by what happened and disgusted by what happened. And it also, the article kind of says, it sort of concludes with, oh, by the way, bin Laden's youngest son has kind of taken on his father's mantle of, like, world terrorist who wants revenge. So that's out there now. But basically, it's a very, very interesting article. It's well written. It doesn't editorialize, and if it does, it's nothing that's, like, polarizing, in a sense. But there's really not a lot of editorializing here. It really is like, here are these people, here are how they see the event. They're weirdly close to it. Now, I mentioned this article to my own mother, saying how this was an interesting thing. And she had a reaction that I used to have the same kind of reaction to things of this nature. And I know a lot of people still do out there of, why listen to these people at all? What he did was so disgusting. So forget that entire family. Forget all of them. That this happened because of that. And, I mean, I didn't argue the point with my mother as far as I know, but I was thinking about that, and it's the same idea of, I mean, it's obviously a smaller scale. It would have to be a smaller scale. The terrorism compared to the Holocaust. Now, what I mean by that is the sort of the motto or the phrase that's associated with the Hitler's genocide of the Jews in Europe and surrounding areas and all these things was the motto is never forget. But never forget excludes another important part of that. By never forget, but also look at the dark parts of what happened. You have to, even if it's an uncomfortable, disgusting, despicable situation, even if you want bin Laden's family to rot in hell because they're related to this man, you still have to look at the way that they experienced this thing. You have to look at it from as many angles as you possibly can, and that's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be incredibly nasty and disturbing, and you're going to have a lot of emotions doing it. But it's important to do because you have to understand how these things happened so that you can prevent it from happening again. That's the important part, and that's a major part of that never forget motto for the Holocaust is you have to examine the enemy in the story, the villain. You have to look at them. You have to look at their motives. You have to look at the people around them. You have to listen to these stories because it's important to do that. And it's in no way glamorizing the perpetrators of these heinous crimes. In no way is it doing that, but it's understanding the mindset. It's understanding who these people are, how this happened, and then being able to, down the road, spot these things and nip them in the bud before they happen because you now have the information, because you peeled back that curtain and looked at the darkness behind it, not to speak in such metaphorical sort of platitudes and nonsense statements. But so I encourage everyone to read this article. It does not glamorize bin Laden. It doesn't even really glamorize the family. It just explains it from the other side. And that's important for all the reasons I just laid out. Because, you have to try to look at something from all angles if you really want to understand it. And in order to prevent things down the road, you have to have an understanding of the possibilities. I mean, I could bring up the classic thing of, and it's not even necessarily accurate if you listen to Hardcore History by Dan Carlin. It's a podcast he does about where he really dives into major historical moments. It's a very long-form podcast. individual episodes can range up to 4 hours and be multi-parts. But I don't remember why I brought that up. I kind of, I lost it. I lost my train of thought. That is the absolute worst, especially when you're live on the radio. Oh, man. Okay, you know what? Let's just play music then, because I've lost the thought to the extent that I don't even remember the sort of trail of thinking I was even on. That's how far gone it is from my head. Maybe I'll remember in the break. Maybe not. Either way, I'm going to play for you now Patti Smith and Joan Baez singing A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall in Germany, I believe. I guess just honoring Bob Dylan. I don't know if the whole concert was for that. It doesn't seem to be, but they did. And if anybody doesn't remember, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall is the song Patti Smith sang when she went to the, what's it called, Nobel Prize thing, when Bob Dylan was being awarded. She got lost a little bit. Her nerves got to her while she was on the stage, and she had to start over again a little bit. We played that a while ago. And Joan Baez has also covered this song. It's fantastic. So let's hear these two elder stateswomen of the rock scene. Though I guess Joan Baez isn't really in the rock scene. But, you know, a guitar is involved, so close enough. But, yeah, Patti Smith and Joan Baez, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall from Germany just a couple of days ago.
I stumbled on side of 12 misty mountains. I've walked and I've crawled down 6 crooked highways. I've stepped in the middle of 7 sad fires.
Actually, I'm going to pause that. That's how weird this show is. I just remember the point I was trying to make with the Bin Laden thing. Was that Napoleon's invasion of Russia and then Hitler's invasion of Russia after that. Because, you know, they always say if you just, you know, focused on the history, he wouldn't have repeated the mistake. It's actually not true. If you listen to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, he does this, it's a 3 or 4 part, hours long each episode, called Ghost of the Ostfront, which is fantastic, which focuses on World War II from the perspective of Russian and German forces clashing towards the end of the war. And how absolutely bloody and horrific it was, and how it's just not discussed pretty much ever in school. But he does say in that Hitler actually obsessively studied Napoleon in order to not make that same mistake. But he, I don't know, something went wrong or whatever. But my point was, you have to look at all sides of things, no matter how uncomfortable, how evil, how dark, so that you can prevent things from happening again. Back to Patti Smith and Joan Baez. Whew, it is warm in this room. Patti Smith and Joan Baez doing a duet of A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall from Germany. It looks like August 2nd, so just a few days ago. Patti Smith had the lyrics in her hand the entire time, which is smart after what happened, I guess, Stockholm, wherever they do the dumb Nobel Prize thing. Yeah, so she had the notes in her hand, and I don't blame her. Anybody saying, the comment section's like, she could have learned the lyrics beforehand. You know, it's like, I mean, I guess so, but if you really think about it, it's a 7-minute poem, and it's another person's song, so why would you memorize that? I mean, it was fine. The way she did it just now is fine. If every musician went on stage and just had the lyrics in their hands, I wouldn't care at all. That's me personally. Why would I care about that? I just want to hear them sing it. I don't care what they need to do to be able to sing it. Just do it. So, yeah, that's just me, though. Let's talk about some more entertainment things. How about Winnie the Pooh? What? Winnie the Pooh? That's right. Winnie the Pooh is banned in China. Let's discuss this. From Vox.com. Christopher Robin is denied a Chinese release. The latest victim in China's war on Winnie the Pooh. President Xi Jinping is sensitive about this because there is a hilarious picture going around because it is so dead on the way that whoever found this meme is a genius because, I don't know. There's a very, very funny picture. I'll post it to Instagram of Winnie the Pooh and Tigger walking together. And Winnie the Pooh has his left leg out in front, and his right arm out like it's swinging, like he's walking. And Tigger has his arms kind of down by his sides and one leg kind of bent to continue walking. And the picture they've placed side by side with that is Xi Jinping and Barack Obama in the exact same poses as Winnie the Pooh and Tigger. It's insane how dead on it is. So because Xi Jinping is being compared to Winnie the Pooh, the movie Christopher Robin has been banned in the nation of China. So that's weird. So let's see here. The Chinese leader is prickly about comparisons between him and the lovable cartoon character, who has become a symbol of the resistance there. Okay, so Winnie the Pooh is actually now a symbol of resistance to the, president for life, Xi Jinping, which, by the way, I understand that is something that has to inevitably happen in any kind of political cycle, but people aren't going to like it ever. So, let's see. The film, which premiered in the United States on Friday, has been denied a release in China. No reason has been given for the film's denial, but according to The Hollywood Reporter, it's because of China's censorship of Winnie the Pooh images that started last year. Authorities have been blocking images of the character on social media because of memes and bloggers, likening Xi's appearance to Pooh's. Now, imagine you're in China, and you join, like, the Secret Service, and everyone's so proud of you, your family's so happy, you're like, I'm going to be doing big things for China. I'm going to be protecting us from all kinds of foreign and domestic threats. I am part of the elite squad of making China great. And you go to work on the first day, and they say, your job is to find every picture of Winnie the Pooh on Facebook and report it. And that's your job. You're not really helping China, you're just censoring children's cartoons on websites because your president is sad that he's been compared to a pantsless bear. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that is a thing that could happen. Even more ridiculous to admit that is a thing that is happening. So, let's see here. In June, China started censoring mentions of HBO comedian John Oliver and HBO's website after his show Last Week Tonight ran a segment criticizing China and Xi specifically for the increasingly authoritarian policies of the Chinese Communist Party, which he leads. The segment mentioned the Winnie the Pooh jokes and Xi's sensitivity to them. And it's important to note, and this is something I heard, I know it's now like a weekly thing of me bringing up Jordan Peterson on the air. I don't consider myself a part of the Jordan Peterson followers. I know they're looked down upon and shunned. I'm not sure why. I'm not a part of that group or movement or whatever it is. I just find a lot of what he says pretty interesting, and I think he's good at speaking in a public forum, and he speaks in an intelligent way, and he doesn't condescend. He raises questions, which is really good. But he made an interesting statement on something. I just heard it recently where he said, I think it was him, that communism and socialism everybody thinks they're on the other end of the spectrum from fascism, but the reality is they're at the same place on the spectrum. They're both at that far end on the right. And the reason that communists and fascists don't get along with each other is because they're battling each other for control of everyone. So, they both want the same thing, but they want to be the group that's doing it. So the idea that it's a communist party running China, it's fascism. At the end of the day, that's what it is. So thank goodness Winnie the Pooh is there to help fight the good fight, I guess. What an odd world we live in. This is really bizarre. Somebody's going to have to document this in history books one day. Just think about that for a second. You're going to have paragraphs in history textbooks in schools dedicated to a reality TV show billionaire almost tweeting the country into nuclear war, but then saving it because Dennis Rodman helped. That's the kind of stuff that kids are going to be reading about one day, and that's going to seem normal to a generation at some point. That's maybe the weirdest part, is that remove ourselves from this by 100 years. Let's say 100 years from now, people are going to look back and go, that's not so weird. They're going to look back at like Reagan or Nixon or Kennedy as weird. This is not going to be seen as weird. This is going to be the norm from now on. That is so bizarre. But, yeah. So let's continue here. China has also imposed a quota on the number of foreign films released there annually. And there are a number of big Hollywood films in China right now. So that could also be why Christopher Robin has been banned. It's the second Disney movie to be axed for release by Chinese authorities this year. They also said no to A Wrinkle in Time. Now, I'm all for anybody saying no to Disney, but this is a weird one. I personally think Disney has far too much power. Didn't get really a lot of time to talk about that last week. I wanted to, but it's frightening. And everybody just sees Disney as this whimsical place where dreams come true, when in reality is they're buying all of the entertainment, and soon they're going to be deciding what it is you're allowed to watch. Now, am I getting a little sort of hysterical over this? Is there a little hysteria amongst my words? Possibly, probably. But, whatever. So, oh, no way! Where do they keep finding these Winnie the Pooh memes? They found another picture where he looks exactly like Winnie the Pooh, doing the exact same things. This is insane. The next year, a picture of Xi shaking hands with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe drew comparisons with a picture of Pooh shaking hands with Eeyore, and it really does look exactly the same. All right, here's one that's not as similar. There's it's a toy of Winnie the Pooh in a car, and then Xi Jinping standing and kind of emerging from the sunroof of some kind of vehicle with 4 microphones in front of him. So he did not take kindly to the comparisons, and Chinese censors started blocking images and mentions of Pooh on social media. GIFs, because I won't commit to a pronunciation, of the cartoon bear were deleted from China's instant messaging app, WeChat, and mentions of him were censored from Chinese microblogging site Weibo as illegal content. In June, it was John Oliver that criticized Xi and brought up the Winnie the Pooh problem. So, yeah, I don't agree with John Oliver on most things, but this is a good sentence from him. Clamping down on Winnie the Pooh comparisons doesn't exactly project strength. It suggests a weird insecurity. Yeah. So, that's just more of what's happening in China on their very strange road to having their very strange road of settling in their dictator, because it's not like they're moving towards dictatorship. They're in it now. They're on the front lines of dictatorship, but the guy is still kind of getting used to it, I'd say. So, that's weird. That might be our dunce of the week, I'm thinking. Xi Jinping for, I don't know, man. Actually, I'm gonna be careful. I'm getting paranoid now, just because I'm, I don't know, a generally kind of paranoid person. But I wouldn't put it past Xi Jinping to assassinate a community radio host if he is also banning images of a cartoon bear on the internet. It's the same level of lunacy associated with both, I'd say. Maybe more so on, him sending agents to get me, but whatever. And for the record, I don't actually think anybody's coming to get me, because that would sound literally bona fide insane. So yeah, it's Xi Jinping. He's our dunce of the week, because he banned Winnie the Pooh because there are some images that bear a passing resemblance to him. Instead of leaning into it and laughing with everyone, he decided to alienate everyone about it. So, congratulations, Xi Jinping. Dunce of the week. Now, let's do one more weird news story, and then we'll play some music, right? This is coming from, it's from tampa.cbslocal.com, but it's not about Tampa. I'm sure to an extent it is. Listen to this headline. It pretty much says it all. Obese tourists are crippling donkeys on a Greek island, activists claim. So, Santorini, Greece. The Greek island of Santorini is known for its stunning views, steep hills, and tradition of using donkeys as the main form of transportation. While most tourists love traveling to the island on a donkey, activists are now saying visitors from the US and Europe are too fat to sit on the animals. Activists with Help the Santorini Donkeys told multiple news outlets in the United Kingdom that overweight tourists are crippling donkeys who are developing spine and legs problems from carrying so many people. Locals have even started breeding their donkeys with stronger mules, so it is easier for them to carry fatter tourists, according to a report in the Mirror. So, yeah, it's just... And I'm sure the fat people from our country that are going over there are yelling about how it's not fair. I don't know. I'm pretty sure there was an episode of Nathan For You that had this exact issue. If anybody hasn't watched Nathan For You, it might be the funniest TV show on the air right now. I recommend every single person that can hear this right now go watch Nathan For You. It's a Comedy Central show. I don't know. It's like, it's not a reality show. It's this guy Nathan Fielder, and he's odd, but like in a funny way. You can never really tell if that's like how he actually is or if he's doing it for the show. He definitely creates some cringy moments for effect on the show. But his idea is he goes around to different little businesses, and what he does is he helps struggling companies and people with just these insane strategies that are, I mean, there's no other word than insane to describe his plans. And they put these plans into effect to help boost business. And there is some really ridiculous things that happen. I just watched the season 4 premiere the other day, and by helping a struggling diner, he wanted to get a celebrity that would leave a big tip so that would attract news to the, like sort of attention on the diner. So he went and found celebrity impersonators, and he had them all do their celebrity impersonation thing while he sat in a folding chair and recorded it, brought it back to the guy in the diner. The only person the guy in the diner really reacted to positively was a Michael Richards impersonator, and the guy was basically just doing Kramer. So they had this guy pretending to be Michael Richards. Then Nathan went on Craigslist, found somebody who would be willing to change their name for $1,000, had his name changed to Michael Richards so that the impersonator would use the bank card they then had to take out in the name of Michael Richards. Then if they found out that the guy who changed his name also has a history of stealing large amounts of money from people, so Nathan handcuffed himself to the guy for 24 hours while the money was in his account for the tip. And then it's bizarre. It's really strange, but it's real. These are real people. And he's been doing it since 2013. So there's 4 seasons, 8 episodes each, except for this season, which is 7 episodes. It might be the funniest show on TV. It might be. I don't know. I defy or challenge somebody to name a funnier show on TV. I don't know if any show has brought me to tears from laughter more than that one. But, yeah. So I'm pretty sure there was an episode where he was helping broaden the pony rides by allowing fatter people to go on them. And I think what they ended up doing was like, I can't remember. I don't remember if they were tying balloons, like weather balloons, to the fat people to make them lighter on the horse. It was something very odd. But again, hilarious. So check that out. Again, this is now happening in real life. Obese tourists are crippling donkeys on the Greek island of Santorini, which, I don't know. I assume their main export is Italian magicians. But that's just my take. Let's see. So we did our dunce of the week. You know what? I don't know if I'm going to do science of the week because I have last week's here, but I don't really want to do that right now. I don't really want to do that. We're talking entertainment. So I do want to talk about a couple of things that I saw the other day. Recommendation time. There's this new show. If any of you guys like organized crime, TV shows or movies, I personally am obsessed with them. I've been obsessed with organized crime from probably the age of 12, sometime around there. I consider myself not a historian necessarily, but I do a lot of research into, and the real stuff too, and I watch a lot of the fiction stuff also, as much of it as I can find. And there's one particular organized crime group that I am not familiar with, and that is Indian organized crime. And I'm talking subcontinent India, Indian organized crime. There's this new show on Netflix. It's a Netflix original called Sacred Games. Now, I'm going to pull up the Wikipedia because they'll be able to give us more of a concise sort of summary than I would be able to. Sacred Games TV series, Indian web television series based on a 2006 thriller novel of the same name. First Netflix original from India. Now, it is... okay, so basically... Sartaj Singh is a troubled police officer in Mumbai who receives a phone call from gangster Ganesh Gaitanda. Gaitanda tells him to save the city within 25 days. The series chronicles the events that follow afterwards. So basically, it's this sort of like down on his luck police officer. He's a pretty he's a fairly low-level guy. He's an underperforming officer who has a pretty miserable personal life. And he gets a call from this gangster who hasn't been seen in 17 years, who resurfaces and says, oh yeah, everyone in Mumbai is going to die in 25 days. And then he starts telling the story. So similar to the way The Godfather 2 kind of worked was the show goes back and forth between present day with Sartaj Singh and the other police officers trying to figure out what's going on. And certain people have weird kind of corruption connections to the gangster Gaitanda. But it alternates also by showing Gaitanda's rise to crime kingpin from being the poor son of a beggar priest in a little village all the way up to like crime kingpin. So it jumps back and forth between those two time periods to give you more of a picture on how these things started, how we got to the point where everyone's going to die in 25 days. And it's 8 episodes, and it is fantastic. Mostly positive reviews from critics, particular praise on the performances and writing. And I would agree with that. It's also interesting. You're going to learn some Indian history. Like, I didn't know Indira Gandhi, I think it was her, when she was prime minister, that there were forced sterilization campaigns in India in like the 70s or 80s, I think it was, to control population. Like, there's some pretty abysmal things that happened over there that are not necessarily known. So seeing stuff like this is always good to kind of broaden horizons a bit. But on top of that, it's just a really good show. It's interesting. It's shocking at times. It's a great thriller. That's the thing. It's half thriller, half rags to riches crime story. So it's great, and I recommend everyone check it out. You can listen to it with the English dub because it's a Netflix original. They took the time to really set it up and give you a lot of options. Personally, and it's going to sound pretentious, I know, I'm already talking about a foreign language TV show, so I'm in hot water there. But my recommendation, listen to it in Hindi, which is the original language it was filmed in, so that the voices match the mouths, and put on English captioning, so that and the closed captioning, not just the English subtitles, because there are times where they start speaking English, but you still think, but you didn't realize for a second that they had switched languages because it happens just so quickly. It would just be better to have subtitles on for anything that's said. So that's Sacred Games, which is a great show. I hope everybody checks that out. Makes me think a little bit about Sabura, Blood on Rome, another great organized crime foreign show. That one focusing on Italy. So watching that yesterday and the day before, and then also, we're going to take a quick break, and then I want to come back. I want to talk a little bit about M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan, and then we're going to talk about maybe Guardians of the Galaxy to wrap the show up. Or whatever. I don't like planning in advance what I'm going to say, because I just end up talking about other things. So, let's see. Wow, a lot of stuff. This YouTube recommendations really bug me, because it's either all stuff I've already seen, or it's just other radio shows and podcasts that I've also listened to already. So finding music on here it's difficult. Let me see. Oh, you know what I'm going to play? I'm going to play a Lou Reed song, I believe. We're going to play Caroline Says. I'm going to play the first one. There's two. There's Caroline Says 1 and Caroline Says 2. And I think we're going to play the first one because it's shorter by 16 seconds and we're running low on time. So here's Caroline Says, and then I'll probably fade it out later on. And we'll talk about more stuff. All right, you get the picture. She's his queen. That's Caroline Says. I guess part 1. Or Caroline Says, Roman numeral 1 by Lou Reed, off of his album Berlin, which is, I'm pretty sure, was pretty well received. It was no Metal Machine music, but yeah. So back here now on the Fringe, 103.7 WPWL, Pauling Public Radio. I just wanted to talk about M. Night Shyamalan a bit, but I'm realizing I don't have a lot to say. I just want to encourage everyone to watch. He's been on a hot streak lately. He's got 2 great movies. Well, one of them's good, but the other one's fantastic. The good movie is the Visit, I think it was called. It was the one where the kids go to the grandparents' house. It's like a found footage documentary horror movie. It was good, but Split. I just saw Split recently, and I watched it again with the rest of my family recently, and I love that movie. It is so underrated in terms of how creepy it is, and also what a just masterful performance James McAvoy does. He plays like 6 different characters in the movie, and the only distinguishing features are the voice and his posture when he plays them, and his facial expressions. And it's just like, it's brilliant. His acting is brilliant in that movie. But of course, because it's an M. Night Shyamalan thriller, the Hollywood high horse people didn't even look twice at that movie when considering awards. So, yeah. Before you watch Split, watch Unbreakable. That was another one I rewatched recently. And I know that this is, a lot of people would disagree and they would say Pulp Fiction, but I think that Unbreakable is Samuel L. Jackson's best movie because it's probably his most understated performance. I don't think he yells one time in that movie. He's literally acting in the movie, and he's great. He's my favorite character in that movie. So, yeah, M. Night Shyamalan, and of course Unbreakable and Split are leading us into the third in this surprise trilogy, a movie called Glass, which the trailer is out for now. I watched some of it. It looks horrifying, and I can't wait till it comes out. It comes out in like October, November, maybe even September. I'm not sure, but it's gonna wrap something up. The main reason for bringing this up is, please, someone get this to M. Night Shyamalan, because I want to shake him and tell him, just do these kinds of movies. Do these quasi-superhero movies where everything's linked together. Do that, because that is your strong suit, sir. Do that. So that's what I want to say about that. But so if you haven't seen Unbreakable or Split and are avoiding them because M. Night Shyamalan's name is associated with them, you're doing yourself a disservice. Look past the stereotypes or his 9 in a row dud movies. He's back. M. Night Shyamalan's back, people. I'm saying it right now, right here on the Fringe. He's back. So there you go. Let's just speed round some news stories here. I didn't realize how little time I had left. Very quickly, Venezuela, the president, Maduro, was attacked at, what's it called? He was at a military event in Venezuela. He was speaking, and there was a drone attack. There was a drone blast during the event. He was ushered out of there quickly. The military was on high alert. When you hear drone strike in a foreign country, you tend to think, oh, maybe America had a little bit to do with that. Because is anybody else using drones? People are. That's the most frightening part about drones, is that it's a technology that in 10 years, every world power is going to be using the same thing. Soon it's just going to be drone strikes is how war goes. That's a frightening idea. So, basically, John Bolton, who is a national security advisor to the White House, told Fox News Sunday, quote, "I can say unequivocally there is no U.S. government involvement in this at all," end quote. He suggested that the Maduro government itself could be behind the explosion, citing widespread corruption and oppression in Venezuela. He said it could be a lot of things, from a pretext set up by the Maduro regime itself to something else, adding that there were no Americans injured in the blast. And then he's also saying, like, hey, if there's hard evidence that America had something to do with this, please present it. We'll address it. So it does seem like America probably has nothing to do with that. But it is odd. It is odd. And it is strange when other countries start getting the same technology you have. I mean, that led to something that in this country we like to call the Cold War, but which we're back into now. So anyways, let's just jump to entertainment news. This is a very quick one. This is more for my fellow Star Trek fans. Guess what, everyone? Well, if you're a Star Trek fan, you already know this news story. And if you're not a Star Trek fan, this news story is not interesting to you. So I don't know who this is for. But basically, there's a new Star Trek show coming out to CBS All Access. Now, they've butchered the one they already have, which is disappointing. But then again, that's a prequel series, and they're kind of getting their feet wet, and it's best to just ignore it and pretend it's not part of the canon. The next show that they're doing is going to be officially a sequel to all of it. Because if you go by the timelines of the show, now I'm getting nerdy here, but Star Trek Voyager, which is the, let's see, it goes original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery. Voyager is the one that takes place the furthest into the future. So chronologically, it is the most, it's the furthest along. This new show is now going to be further than that because it's going to focus on the character of Jean-Luc Picard. And guess what? Patrick Stewart is coming back to play the role of Picard. That is one of the more exciting things I've heard in a long time. Is that there's a new Star Trek show focusing on the next chapter in Jean-Luc Picard's life. I can't wait for that. I might have to subscribe to CBS All Access. Or maybe not. But we'll see. Oh, I didn't even talk about Steven Seagal. Okay, here's one thing about Steven Seagal. Somebody's calling the station. Stop it. Okay, so if you thought Dennis Rodman being our advisor to North Korea was insane, guess what? Russia just declared Steven Seagal its Hollywood actor that's tasked with improving ties to the United States. So I thought that was one of the craziest things I've ever heard in my life. And then I went to Wikipedia to look more into this. Steven Seagal apparently has described Vladimir Putin as one of the great living world leaders and stated that he would like to consider Putin as a brother, expressed support for the annexation of Crimea by Russia. And then in July 2014, following calls for a boycott, Seagal was dropped from the lineup for the August Blues Festival in Estonia. I don't know, but basically he's a Russian citizen, and he is very pro-Putin and pro-Russia. And so his views on Ukraine and Russian citizenship, well, now it looks like Ukraine has banned him because he is, let's see, Ukraine had banned him because he committed socially dangerous actions. So it's really, and he's, of course, skeptical about Russian interference in the 2016 United States election. That doesn't make him pro-Russia. It just makes him pro-facts. But what's it called? So Steven Seagal is now going to help us be friends with Russia. If you didn't think that you were going insane, now you know that you and everyone else. There must be like a global-wide gas leak, right? There has to be something to explain this. It's insane. Because now it begs the question is when celebrities start to talk about politics, maybe their voices are going to be important at some point. They shouldn't be. But if they're going to be our new diplomats to contentious places around the world, maybe they're weird politics. We have to listen to them. I don't know. So Steven Seagal is going to help us in Russia be friends. Also, that Crimea thing. I used to think that I don't know what guest Bo is talking about in the chat room, but that's from an hour ago. So I will. I'll ask about that on another time. So. The Crimea annexation, looking into that, I don't know how I feel about that just because, you know what, I don't have a moral opinion on it. Because I'm looking more for moral consistency with other people. Because if you're fine with the United Kingdom having Northern Ireland as a part of their kingdom, then having Russia annex Crimea, is there that much of a difference between those two things? Is there? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it on the surface. If anything, England was much more violent towards Ireland, leading to them annexing that. But again, I don't know enough about the thing, so I am not the person to talk about it. So I'm going to stop talking about it. But yeah. And then, Papa John getting dumped for more stuff. His donation of $8 million or something is being returned to him, so whatever. I wish he'd just stop crying and accept that he's a fool. Go start a new pizzeria. How hard could that be? You're Papa John. You're already a brand. Like, you as a person are a brand. Just take it somewhere else and do something different. Stop whining about your nonsense. And last, we got one more minute. And thank God I wrote all my thoughts out the other day. So, it's James Gunn's birthday, and James Gunn is the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He's a big, like, Disney Marvel guy. Now, apparently he made some, I can't remember what kind of jokes they were on Twitter. It was either rape jokes or pedophilia jokes, or it was something, like that, which, he was married to Jenna Fisher? Good for you, James Gunn. But, basically, he made comments on Twitter, and they removed him from Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, the Guardians of the Galaxy cast has come out in defense of James Gunn, basically saying, like, oh, you don't know him like we do. He's a good guy. He shouldn't be punished for this. Now, here's what I wrote out here. When you start defending certain groups, but not all, when these things happen, you begin to value certain groups over others, which runs directly contrary to the idea of equality, which the left, particularly the Hollywood types, often spout out as their justification for their actions, which makes them hypocrites. And I posted an Instagram post that got some nice feedback from several people, thank you all for that, about how it's a weird sort of fascism when Hollywood gets to decide who has freedom of speech and who doesn't. I'm all about freedom of speech. I think that he should be able to make any kind of jokes he wants on Twitter. But he got in trouble, and Hollywood rallied and said, no, he's not really like that. He can stay. What about Roseanne Barr? She made jokes that people were upset about, and she got fired. She got everything taken away from her, and nobody came to her defense at all. And it is almost exactly the same situation. Almost exactly the same. But it's Hollywood picking and choosing, which also devalues their argument about censorship. Because you can't censor some people and not others. You should be censoring no one. That's the ideal. But I'm over my time now. I just wanted to leave you all with that little thing there. No science again this week. But there's some stuff about black holes, artificial intelligence is bad, and a bunch of worms from 42,000 years ago in Siberian permafrost wriggled back to life when they were thawed out. So that's pretty gross, but cool. So thank you all for listening to The Fringe, 103.7 WPWL, Pauling Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Rush Studios in downtown Pauling, New York. I am Mike Berquist. I will be here again next week. My guests are set to come in next week. We will see what happens with that. Again, thank you all, and see you next week. Peace.